Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Comox Valley Regional District Electoral Area Services Committee for Monday, May 6th, 2024. And we have a few people in the gallery just for the benefit of those here. We do have the washrooms in behind here, down the hall, and to your right. And should there be any emergencies, the muster point is outside in the parking lot on the I guess the north side. There's exits, of course, where you came in, as well as exits there and there as well. So hopefully we don't have to use them. I'm going to start by recognizing the fact that we are doing our work and today on the traditional unceded territory of the Comox First Nation, on whose land we've been very privileged to live for the last, at least my family, for the last 150 years. We have starting out a delegation follow-up, Sewer Extension South LWMP addendum. We do this when we have delegations. We don't usually deal with the delegation at that point. We usually refer to the next meeting. So I'm going to turn it over to the CAO for introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning to the committee. As you mentioned, this is a delegation follow-up from the last Electoral Area Services Committee meeting. Staff were able to connect with the delegate and provide information on the process, and the committee did resolve to submit the addendum report to the province for review, but noted that there will be further opportunity for public engagement on the project during the upcoming Stage 3 LWMP process. Staff are available if you have any further questions in that regard, but we don't see any further follow-up required at this time.
So any questions from the directors? Seeing none, we'll move along to the resolution status report. There's a report here for receipt. Moving second on receipt. Anything on the status report we want to discuss or bring up or ask questions of staff? Seeing none, I'll call the question on receipt. Anyone opposed? And that carries. Reports. Advisory Planning Commission minutes. We have the Agricultural Advisory Planning Commission from March 14th and the Area B Advisory Planning Commission from March 18th for receipt. Move a second on both reports. Any discussion on any of the reports? Seeing none, I'll call the question on receipt. Any opposed? That also carries. Now, I think we probably have the fire chief online today. Proposed amendment to bylaw number 695, Northern Fire Service Area Administration. A report for receipt. Move a second receipt and over to CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Bruce Green, our regional rural fire chief, is not actually online. He's predisposed, so unable to attend. Doug DeBarzo, our general manager of community services, will be presenting in Bruce's space. So Doug, over to you.
Thank you, Doug.
Good morning, and through the chair, this is just an administrative bylaw update. Really focuses on Oyster River's oversight of both Mount Washington and Merville Hall. As such, we're looking at bylaw number 695 to update those other two rescue departments and establish their operational parameters and their declared level of service. So in that sense, we're just looking to update them to full service departments as noted in our 695 bylaw. And take any questions if you should have any.
Thank you very much. I was remiss in mentioning the fact we have Director John Rice here from Strathcona Regional District Area D, who shares with Area C the service committee that manages fire and water in both our districts, at least the northern part of one and the southern of the other. So that begs the question: do we have any questions from staff or for staff? Okay, don't see any. So Director Rice does get to vote on this. So on receipt, all those in favor? That carries. And the recommendation that bylaw 695, Northern Fire Service Area Administration bylaw, be amended as outlined in the Appendix A. Need to make the motion on recommendation? Sorry, missed you. Try it again.
Move recommendation.
Okay, seconded. Second. Any discussion on the recommendation? Not seeing any. I'll call the question on the recommendation. Any opposed? That carries. Now, I'm going to ask that we vary the agenda because we do have the proponents here for item number 4. And item number 3 might take a while. So if I could get a motion to vary the agenda and bring forward item number 4, the agricultural land reserve non-farm use for 8150 Island Highway. Okay, on the variance. Any opposed? That carries. We've received that, number 4. Okay, so again, over to staff.
Thank you. And Jody McLean, our senior planner, will be introducing the staff report, and we're available for questions to follow. Jody?
Good morning, thank you. So this is an application to the Agricultural Land Commission for a non-farm use in the Agricultural Land Reserve. The Agricultural Land Commission requires the local government to review these applications before they'll even consider them. And that's what we're doing here today. The Regional Board has the options of forwarding the application to the Land Commission with comments and recommendations, or refusing the application to end consideration. The proposal is to use the front end of this long, narrow 14-hectare lot for developing a new abattoir or slaughter establishment. The Agricultural Land Reserve regulations make provisions for farmers to process their own animals, plus a certain amount of animals from other farms. However, in this case, this property currently does not have farm status, and the proposed slaughter establishment would primarily focus on the slaughter of animals from outside farms, meaning the non-farm use application is required. Yeah, as illustrated in the conceptual plan, the owner envisions the facility would only be one building with access off the island highway. They intend to design it for same-day processing so that there'd be no housing of livestock on site. All such facilities, they need a provincial slaughter license under the meat inspection regulations. The owners intend to apply under the abattoir license category, which that's the one that does not place a cap on the number of animals that are processed per year, and but it does have limits that the sales can only be within BC, and it requires pre and post slaughter inspections of each animal. The Agricultural Advisory Planning Commission reviewed this application and was supportive of it proceeding. And Mr. Chair, the official community plan is supportive of locating food processing facilities in these agricultural areas when they support the local agricultural industry. And as this is the case here, staff is also supportive of this application proceeding to the Agricultural Land Commission.
Thanks, Jody. Questions from directors? Director Arbor.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, it's good to see. I think the cultural proposal pretty tangible in terms of needed infrastructure. Maybe I missed it in the report, but I'm just curious what type of animals, because I know on Hornby, a lot of people I know have had trouble the last 15 years dealing with their chickens. And at one point they were driving down to Duncan, and I forget the gap analysis on that, but is that one of the targeted animals, or it's mostly for?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, the owner, he is in the audit gallery today. It'd be best if he was able to speak to what he envisions happening inside the slaughter establishment. George Weeb is his name.
We'll get you up on the lectern there and press a little button and I'll turn your mic on. There you go.
Good morning. Thank you for having me this morning here. At this point, I think the larger focus and answer to the question would be to stick with red meats. So be cattle and pork primarily. We may entertain wild game during hunting season, but we understand limitations with mixing tame and wild. And we also understand limitations between red and white. And so there's certain things that are obviously heavy oversight from the Ministry of Ag and Food that we're accountable to under our abattoir license. Not all of those things have been finalized at this point, but our focus is cattle and pork at this point. A big I guess impetus behind this proposal is the lack of processing facilities that we have in the Comox Valley. Myself as a farmer, and I bring attention to this in page 10 of the report. Mention was made that it appears that 100% of the animals perhaps would be processed there would be from other farms. And due to that, us acquiring this property late last year was undeveloped, is mostly treed with a house. In our initial application to the ALC, we had made mention that there was existing 7 horse stalls and an outdoor riding arena, which I'm not a horse person. I don't intend to have horses there, but that's how we purchased it. And so obviously I couldn't make mention of any cattle being farmed there because there was none as such at the time. But between then and now, we have cleared about 12 to 13 acres of land and are just getting ready for seed bed for hayland and pasture and fencing. So those animals raised there will be directly involved in this abattoir proposal as well. We do own another farm in Black Creek where we currently have 15 hogs as well as about 26 head of cattle, which will also be a part of this abattoir proposal. Most of them, some are for private use that we would slaughter ourselves for a family. So I thought for the benefit of perhaps the board of directors and Mr. Chair, as well as the ALC committee, there is farming activity going to start happening soon. It's just we haven't had an opportunity in the last 4 months to actually start that. It takes quite a while to clear land and burn the piles, and now that has stopped because most of them piles are bigger than campfires, as you can imagine, and it's campfire only now. So that's basically an overview update of where we're at. And our interest in attending this meeting obviously is to provide this information. And we do thank you for considering this proposal.
Thank you very much. More questions?
No, thanks. And I appreciate the applicant coming to paint the picture of what will be happening. I'm pretty supportive of it. I know I'll take some heat from my son because he went vegan 4 years ago, but I actually believe that anything that enhances food security in the valley is a really good thing. So I'll be in support of this. Thanks.
Thanks very much. I do have a question to the staff, though. Being that this is it's on ALR land, obviously, but it's very much in a quasi-urban area. Is there any process to involve any of the immediate neighbors in this discussion, or is it strictly between the ALR and the proponent?
Yeah, the second one there, there's no public consultation in this process. The way the zoning bylaw is configured is that once they get the ALC's approval, it becomes a permitted use on this lot. There's no consultation needed for this.
So as well, it conforms to our setbacks regarding agricultural land and non-agricultural land.
The only setbacks that be relevant from the CVRD's review would be the building setbacks that have to meet those. And there is some agricultural environmental code of practice for that address kind of abattoirs and if there is housing livestock, those relative to neighboring lot lines, water courses, water wells, and so forth. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you so much for the information. Any other questions, directors? And I suppose this is also part of the Black Lake Oyster Bay Water Service area, so they have potable water for their processing as well.
Yes, that's going to be an important part of
very
running
important
an abattoir is having that kind of clean
Yeah,
water.
that's the sticker for the farmers, right? When they try to do it on site. Okay, seeing no more questions then, we're on receipt. Anyone opposed to receipt? Seeing none, I'll say that carries and the recommendation's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on that? Seeing none, I'll call a question on the recommendation. All in favor? That carries. And now we're going to return to item number 3, the rezoning of 400 Saratoga properties, a report from May 2nd regarding deferral from the April meeting on this item. So I will ask that the vice chair take the chair in this one because I do intend on speaking freely. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Mr. Vice Chair. Jody McLean will be, our senior planner will be introducing the staff report. And then as well, we have a couple other staff who would be available to participate in any discussions that the committee may want to entertain. So Jody, over to you.
Thank you. Okay, so let's just to refresh our memory on this file. The file concerns an area that is slated for development as the Saratoga Beach Estates. The owners are proposing a new development project instead, being referred to as the 400 Saratoga properties. It involves a significant increase in density to a proposed 544 dwelling units in a 30-hectare area. So such a large development in a rural space, it impacts the community's character and the function with its choices, its design layouts, its housing typologies, its streetscapes, its parks and trails, and just its connectivity to the rest of the community. However, the focus of this report here at this stage is mostly on feasibility. This kind of density can only be achieved with the provision of community services. And because there's no existing community sewer system here, and there's no provisions for drainage off lots, and those are both needed for this density, this is a complex and a complicated project. The owners, they have the right to apply for rezonings, and the CVRD has the obligation to consider the application, which is what we're doing here today, and last meeting and August 2023 meeting also. And to address that feasibility, the applicants, they propose to connect the development project to the Black Creek Oyster Bay water system. That system recently gained capacity to accommodate new development. And this development project would use almost all that capacity. It's feasible, but it's a significant commitment. And there could be trade-offs for being able to accommodate other rezonings and developments elsewhere in that system. On sewer, the applicants are proposing to construct their own system and handing it over to the CVRD for operation through a new local service area. Again, it's feasible, but a significant commitment is necessary to work out the details. It'd be the treatment plant details, considering the outdoor buffering needs, assessing the costs of operations and maintenance, working out the conditions for transfer from private ownership to public and so forth. And for the applicants, also further pursuing offsite conveyance and discharge. On drainage, we're still working out the feasibility. This level of density houses on small lots. It results on drainage off lots, especially in an area with high water table. The conversion of this development from a streetscape that was strata owned and operated with curbs and gutters and storm sewers under the Saratoga Beach Estates to this open ditch streetscape under the Saratoga 400 properties using the ministry's rural road standards. So lots can be sold in fee simple. It makes it far more complex. That culvert and ditch system, it's designed for road drainage to be maintained by the Ministry of Transportation Infrastructure. It's regional contractors. So this proposed solution to direct private drainage to those ditches, it puts an onus on the CVRD to work out that management with the ministry. It's a significant commitment. It's new responsibilities. Both service providers would need to agree in order to even achieve feasibility there. And a service establishment work by the CRD would need to be done. So, Mr. Chair, based on the scope of the request and the information provided, it's staff's recommendation that this application be refused. The request for a zone to accommodate 544 dwelling units in that space will place stress on the existing water utility. And the information provided doesn't make it clear how a practical rainwater management system with this development project design is reasonably feasible. If the application is refused, the Saratoga Beach Estates zone and its master development agreement, it would remain. It may be developed in accordance with that, or another alternative may be applied for. And Mr. Chair, so also in attendance, the agent and the owners are in here, and they can speak to more about their project and their vision. Thank you.
Thanks, Jody. So if the applicant is in the room and would like to come up to the podium, I invite you so.
This on? Perfect. Thank you, Chair. We have no fundamentally new information to provide, but we are here to answer any questions you may have. We did want to reiterate on the rainwater management. There has been discussions with regards to the rainwater management of alternative strategies throughout this process. One of those is a piped rainwater management system that we have been in ongoing discussions on that seems to keep being excluded from the conversation and the presentations that have been provided to the directors at this time.
Are there any questions for the applicant from the directors? Director Green?
Thank you very much. Through the chair and the CAO or acting chair and CAO, when you refer to the rainwater management, I know that your company also did the proposal that we put forward to the province in 2019 on rainwater management, rain gardens, and other fairly progressive concepts of how to handle excessive stormwater. And you know, we seem to be waiting for a response from the ministry from 2019 till the present day. So I would assume that because of the fact that we have done a lot of the preliminary work, and that would be not just for this one property, but I think that was for the maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, staff here, but was that just for the settlement node, or was that for the whole of the community? I'm not sure if it was just specific to the settlement node boundaries. Is that correct? Oh, it was. Okay,
Derry Monteith, I wonder if you might be able to just
Yeah,
confirm the
speak to that. I know it was a while ago and you could jog your memory there, but.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you through the chair. So a study was done previously looking at rainwater management for the Saratoga Beach settlement node. That study was done by Jim Dumont. It wasn't completed by McElhaney.
Yeah.
But it did put forward a number of kind of options in moving forward with more dense development within the Saratoga area.
Just Hanley in general, yeah. Okay, and I know that you've had discussions with the ministry. At what level were you discussing? Was it like the local island, Nanaimo branch, or was it with Victoria itself?
Thank you. Through the chair. We've had discussions at multiple levels. Specifically with this project, it's been with the island team on various levels. We've done detailed modeling with regards to water in the area and how it moves through the area, how it impacts the creek and the downstream watershed, detailed modeling that we've discussed locally. We've also had high-level discussions with Ministry of Transportation as a whole, because we work with them directly throughout British Columbia with regards to how rainwater is managed within Ministry of Transportation Infrastructure. And we have a key team, the one that actually did the design here, who actually works for the ministry for establishing those standards throughout BC. So that we're ongoing working with the ministry, both for the ministry and on numerous projects of this nature throughout British Columbia.
So you maintain then there is comparables out there that the ministry has supported?
Sorry, Chair, I'll just leave my mic on next time. Yes, there are comparables throughout BC. Similar projects of this nature right throughout BC. Yes, that is correct.
Okay, because I know I can understand, staff is reticent to move forward because we don't see any response to previous reports, but I have spoken with our MLA around this issue and asked that we maybe involve the secretary for the electoral areas, or I can't remember, Rolly Russell, to see if we can get some meeting with the senior minister around it. And it seems like that might be a possibility to move this forward, because it would be for the betterment of the greater community, not just specifically for this property. The other thing about the sewer as well, for those that don't know, that there was a sewer referendum, I think in 2004, I believe, that was turned down in the area because the fact that it wasn't being, there was no private partnership, and it was strictly going to be a public system. It was going to be quite expensive. So I do see this as an opportunity to also move forward on providing some proper liquid waste management plan in the area to not necessarily just obviously not to accommodate the strictly the development, but also for the betterment of the at least the immediate residents along the foreshore and around the river. That being said, I think I alluded to the last meeting we had, the fact that when we did our testing of test wells out there for the failing septics, fully half the wells would not have passed the or exceeded or even met the current BC's government standards for failing for operating septic systems. So another big one. So I know we have some huge challenges ahead, and I just want to ensure that that we don't miss the opportunity in the long run, because we're playing a long game here. I think with the water issue, I mean, obviously it may be a bridge too far for your development to consider that many connections. We can't prove that kind of water. I read the report, and even with the new well, and who knows, perhaps the addition of the well number 7 and 8, I believe, it might get a little better. But I mean, traditionally, water dictates development, right? I mean, you can only develop to the amount of water you got. So what I see as the biggest challenges of moving this forward is water. both potable water coming in, wastewater going out, and stormwater and how you deal with it on bigger rain events. So, I mean, it's a challenge, but also an opportunity, I think, for the greater community over the long haul. I know Area D has expressed some interest in maybe being part of this discussion as well, because they have some of the same issues in their more densified areas just north of the river. So I think it begs to be said that the best way forward is to throw this into the meat grinder and see what comes out. By denying even the consultation process, I think we do ourselves a disservice, because there is potential. It may end up being quite different than the original concept. But in the end of the day, I can see, you know, if we try to resolve the three major issues, which are basically around water, you know, we need an honest, positive way of addressing through the public process. And I know there's a lot of fear and loathing out there about the public process, but I see it as being integral into moving this thing forward. I know staff have resurrected the local area plan concept. We were moving forward on that, I think, about 2016, 17. And then we lost a major planner that was integral to the study. And then COVID came along, and then we've lost our CAO. So, you know, these things have been delayed about 8 years, 7 years. But I see that as a different and a separate process. I think the LAP would be for the greater community, not even just the local expansion area. I think or settlement area. I think that they're separate things. You know, I would propose a motion that would move forward on referrals. And we also suggest that the proponent go to the public in the form of public houses on their own, separate from the process for the local area plan, because I think they're different things. One will inform the other, but not necessarily the same. So I wondered, were you at any time proposing to go forward with like open house public consultation?
Through the chair, yes, we've put together a detailed engagement plan. We had intended to start our engagement about a year ago, and we were asked to just hold off so we could work with staff through the process to make sure that we're managing the process together. And so we've been working with staff on that since that time.
Okay, but I know in other jurisdictions, they usually let the proponent do it on their dime as well. Like I know talking to Comox, that's the way they tend to do it. So, you know, I would definitely welcome that. And like I say, as far as the LW or the local area plan, that I see as a longer game and a longer process. But maybe we can work together. I think we need, you know, we have to have an open, respectful, solution-based discussion. We resolve the very many questions about the future of this project and the future of the greater community. So I see no harm in going forward. Obviously, there's going to be some stumbling blocks along the way. And if it gets to the point where it's not doable, if we don't get the kind of cooperation we need to get from senior government, then it's going to be, you know, dead in the water, no pun intended. Anyway, so, you know, we've got a process to put this forward. And if we remain open and flexible on it, I can't see any harm coming out of it at all. So I don't understand actually why we don't go forward on this. I guess I don't have any question, I guess, to the proponent, except that, you know, I think that the flexibility issue is going to be key. I think that the supply of water is going to severely limit maybe the more grandiose aspects of this development. But at the end of the day, one thing I know for sure growing up here, and I hate to say this again and again, but I grew up here when there was 18,000 people in the Comox Valley. Now there's about 74, 75,000. And one thing for sure, you can't stop population growth. But what you can do is direct it towards the best possible concept, the best possible plan, the most livable communities that fit. What do they say on the RGS? Settlement nodes provide infrastructure that's compatible with the scale, design, context, and community features compatible with the neighborhoods. Well, I think that's a doable. I really do. So, you know, the RGS is settlement node growth geared to tourism and residential, facilitating public water and sewer to meet the needs of the existing residents as well. So, you know, I see no harm in moving forward. At any point in time, this could come to a grinding halt, and but at least we need to give it a fair shake. Thank you.
Director Harbour, any questions or comments for the applicant this time? Director Rice, just wondering if at this time you have any comments or questions that you'd like to put forward to the applicant?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just trying to gather information, so I think it would be a little bit presumptuous if I started asking questions at this time, but thank you.
Fair enough. Thanks.
So, Mr. Chair, the staff report on today's agenda dated May 2nd, it is for receipt, been moved and seconded for receipt. And attached to that staff report is the staff report from the previous meeting with the recommendation and to defeat the application at this time. But of course, it is up to this committee to take action and provide direction to staff, which we would follow. And so those are the options in front of the committee at this time. I do see Director Arbor's got his light on.
Director Arbor?
Yeah, thanks. I just put my light on because I thought we might go really quick towards a motion here. So just a process question. So the applicant can be excused from the podium, I guess. And do you want to move receipt before we talk further, or vote on it? Or vote on it, or so does receipt include the motion to deny? Is my question from a procedure perspective.
So the motion on the floor right now is to receive the staff report dated May 2nd. Attached to the May 2nd staff report is the staff report from April 2nd, which included the recommendation to deny. Following your decision to receive this report, you can then make further motions around denying or referring this application.
Okay, great. Thanks for clarifying. So I guess I'll speak now then before we consider a motion. It's a difficult one, and I'm actually glad, hopefully you are as well, to take the couple of weeks to mull it over. And I've been rereading the report a couple times, and I do appreciate the work the applicant has done on this, and actually listening to this committee the last few months and coming back with what I considered an improved proposal. And I appreciate Dr. Greaves' comments around attempting to keep the ball moving forward. In this case, I guess I'll just talk a bit about where I'm at. I think that maybe moving the ball forward, the best way to do it may actually be to deny and support the staff recommendation today. And I've been reflecting a lot about our experience in the South area, where amending the MDA and reconsidering the zoning is really coming as the last step in a long process around figuring out the other pieces around sewage, around water. As you know, we are in the process of trying to look at that MDA and I think when Dr. Grieve, when you say what is the risk with not moving forward, I've been thinking about that. I mean, what is the risk with approving it basically? And I think part of the risk is we've already seen a lot of emails this last week, and we know a significant number of residents have concerns around this initiative and how fast we might be moving it. And we have heard, including from you for a long time, around the need for a local area plan. And I would say maybe even the LWMP. I think if you move it really quick, you might lose some public support for the ultimate sewage solution, because we don't have that process underway, and it would feel like we're amending the MDA without a lot of the information that is needed. So I think in sum, I think it's a valuable project. I think it could end up being even better with denying today, as staff suggests, and completing the local area plan. But I am frustrated as you are. I think since 2018, we've been hearing about the need for a local area plan, and we're still talking about it. So in the staff report, I do say 2024, 2025, and have it completed in 2025. I think we should hold the feet to the fire on that, to that line in the staff report, and try to get that done. And if there's a need for a LWMP process that includes that opportunity, a bit like what we're doing in the South, I think we might end up in a really good place in about a year and a half from now. Thanks, Chair.
Director Green.
I would suggest the director is overly optimistic. I think that considering the fact that everything moves at the speed of government, and the fact that we've got a provincial election coming up, so nothing moves at all until at least November. There's a, you know, this it's going to be a long grind. It's going to be a long process. I think that before we start writing any bylaws, whether it's an MDA or a PDA, I'm not necessarily comfortable with the PDA. It's a fee simple development. You know, with it's sort of like a little bit Wild West, if anything. But certainly, I mean, I'm in favor of moving forward just to get the gears rolling. Because if we're talking about a liquid waste management plan, we're talking about senior government grants. I could literally be appearing my picture on the back pages of the Record newspaper by the time this goes through. So, you know, it's going to be a long haul. It needs the public consultation piece. I don't think there's a rush to write bylaws at this point. So I don't see the harm in at least getting it kickstarted, because you and I know that the process can be a very long one. If we bring in the public, that's integral into this. I agree. I think there's probably some stuff in the plan that wouldn't be supported. There's also stuff in the plan as presented at this point that would be supported. So you know, when you take a look at the connectivity and the roads and all that, as well as entering into some agreement with the province around stormwater management, it could be a win-win all around. So I don't buy into the fears this is going to be a slam dunk. This is going to take a long, long time, be very meticulous. And I am cognizant of the fact that our staff is stretched pretty thin right now with the sewer conveyance project, with the delivery of water to the south, just finished the water processing issue. We talk about, you know, there's so much stuff on the plate right now. And I know I've heard that, well, that isn't an issue, but I would think any reasonable person looking at it would realize that, yeah, you can only do so much work, right? So the proponent has to know as well, this is going to be a slow process, because we have to have the staff to actually address all this stuff. I mean, just the sewer project alone, I mean, how many tries did it take for Union Bay? You know, is it the third iteration? I think it was the third iteration that is, and it's still not firmed up yet. So that's, 3 decades, right? And this has been going on since what, 96, the very first proposal for the Emerald Beach Estates, I think is it 96, Jay? Yeah. So 96. So we're not actually flying through this process. But at least for God's sake, let's get it started.
Director.
Yeah, thanks. I didn't read in the staff report that staff capacity is identified as a key consideration for the recommendation. And if staff capacity is an issue, we can hire up because we have needs. And it's up to this committee to make sure we're properly resourced to address development proposals that come our way. And you've heard me talk in Union Bay the last 2 or 3 years around that, and I think we've hit our stride. But I don't know if staff wants to comment whether we have the capacity to move forward with this or not, both for engineering and planning. My assumption is we do.
Yeah, certainly if the decision here today is to refer this matter and undertake the referral process, staff would identify the resources needed. Whether there's additional resources, we would come back to this committee and make sure that we are able to respond to that resolution.
Yeah, thanks. So that helps. And for me, that's not the issue. The issue is really how do we get a proposal that is great? It's already pretty good, in my opinion. Many people will disagree, but I think it's heading in the right direction. The risk with me, suggesting that we vote this down is the developer walks away for a bit again. And I hope that's not the case, because I think we can still do all these other steps around moving forward on the sewage proposal that includes the whole community, and then refining based on the LEP. And again, I think the staff report says it would be done in the 2024, 2025. That's black on white no, but that's our job, to keep their feet to the fire on this. Right? We've talked about this thing for 8 years. So, it's a question to staff. Does staff believe that we could initiate and complete an LEP for that area in the next year and a half?
I wonder if I could call Alana Malali to the table. Alana's our general manager of planning and development services, and can speak to the concept for the local area plan. As noted from the staff report from April 2nd, I believe it was.
Thanks very much, James. Through the chair to the directors. I think, we've said many times at this table, of course, we'll do what you direct us to do, and whether it involves bringing in a consultant. I think our concern about running these processes concurrently is not about staff resources primarily. It's primarily about the optics for the public and our ability to run a genuine local area planning process while we're processing a development application. So that's my suggestion to you. That's the challenge that we see, and whether our community would be supportive of seeing a local area planning process that's about consulting on various growth scenarios alongside of considering a development application. That's our primary concern.
Yeah, so
Director Robert.
Thanks, Chair. So when, I'm sure Dr. Grieve might have further comments, but this sounds good to me. I think this community, and I hope that the developer doesn't see this, if it gets turned down, as a go away kind of scenario, but as more of, here's an opportunity to even better the proposal, to even gain more support for solutions around water and wastewater through the LEP, and really end up with a project that doesn't really divide the community, but brings everyone together. And there's a lot of good work. I actually am quite, I think that what's on paper, again, not everyone will agree with me, but I think, as Director Grieve says, there's a lot of good things in this proposal. But I do end up, after a 2-week reflection, agreeing with staff that if we push this forward, you'll get resistance on the other side, as opposed to collaboration with many people in the community. And at the same time, I don't think if we push for that LEP in the next year and a half, we will end up with a better product, both for the developer and for the community. So that's why I would vote to deny for today, but to indeed, press forward, and I don't know if we need a further motion to advance the LEP. I don't know where we're at with this, because as Dr. Grief said, it has been a frustrating process around the stop and go in that regard.
Well, I'm gonna chime in now and provide my 2 cents worth. I share the passion that a lot of folks do with regards to future development of Saratoga. But right now, there appears to be some uncertainty around various facets of the project revolving around water, sewer, rainwater management, densities, etc. And more importantly, there seems to be some uncertainty from staff and from a majority of what I'm hearing from the community up at Saratoga right now with regards to this particular application. I do believe that the project is important, and I want to make sure that if the project moves forward, that it's done right. You know, and the famous quote from Mike Holmes, let's make sure we do this thing right. I'd have to say I've read the report 5 different times, and one of the things that stands out to me right now is, again, there is some uncertainty revolving around water, sewer, rainwater management. Those are the 3 key items that I see. What did stand out to me in the report was, again, a commitment from staff on developing a scope of work for Saratoga, and that the plan be somewhat finished by 24-25. I wouldn't want to see it go long into 2025. In fact, I would like to see a commitment from staff to ensure that we have something completed by the end of 2024. I know it's a lot of work to be undertaken, but I think it's an important project, and we want to make sure we do get this thing right. I think it's very important at this time that we do have staff on board with regards to this project, and more importantly, the community on board with this particular project as well moving forward. So I believe there's still a lot of work revolving around consultation with the community, and I think that we need to make sure that that's undertaken. So I know, again, there's a lot of passion with regards to let's get this project going today. I know it's been a long time to get the pokers into the fire to get this thing moving forward. To me, it looks like there is a commitment to get this thing moving forward, and we just need to show a little patience right now. So that was some of my comments with regards to the report right now. Director Green.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I don't deny that these things are all very important. I think the integral piece is, as I said before, is remain flexible and solution-based discussions. The other thing is you need willing partners. Insofar as dealing with the provincial government, as we know, is probably, you know, pretty well on stall right now, very soon anyway, until after election time. So that's going to throw a monkey wrench into everything anyway. Question is, we've got, you know, the residents aren't going anywhere. They have to be assured that they come first and foremost when it comes to water. The existing water users are number one. They're the ones that paid for it. So the water issue is huge, may be unsurmountable. All this stuff needs to be thrown into the mix master for sure. But because it takes partners, it takes the property owner, takes investors, taking a business case that is obviously tied to some economy of scale. Otherwise, it just isn't going to happen. You know, and senior government, the federal government, FCM, UBCM for grant funding, all that stuff. You know, it's I think it's unrealistic to think it's going to happen in 5 years even. So as I say, I think it's important we get it started. We got to get in the starting blocks anyway. There's no decision point that I see until we get to the issue of actually writing an MDA or a PDA. That's when the decision points come, right? So we're quite far off from, all we're doing here is just sending it out for referrals. I don't see why that should be such a terribly big thing. And we can't assume that all these pieces are going to stay in place for forever. I think we have to throw some scrap out there to, at least to the property owners, so that they know that we are moving forward. Otherwise, you know, the whole thing is for naught. We got enough obstacles in the way. You talk about, you know, the water issue is probably number one, because it all is contingent on water supply. And the rest of it pretty well is contingent on partnership with senior government, which, you know, pardon me for saying this out loud, but they've been far from reliable over the years. So unless I wrote a letter, as you probably know, I wrote a letter to the ministry about this rainwater management issue. And I got a letter back from Kellen Truman, actually, basically saying, we'd be happy to look at this proposal, but you have to make an application first. So we have the chicken and egg scenario here. All I'm saying is, let's break a few eggs.
Any other questions or comments, Director Orr?
Yeah, thanks. And yeah, it's a tough one. It's not, you know, I don't think it's a clear-cut decision, but I really think we're better served by going at the right pace. And I guess the risk with sending it to referral is, you know, we're sending something that, as we said, we're not even sure on, that hasn't had a lot of community input. And then what would come back would be bylaw readings. And this room is going to be packed. When we have an opportunity to do the LEP, and I like that Vice Chair Hardy is challenging us to finish it by 2024. I think that sets a pretty high bar, but I like that, you know, that's the kind of resolve we need. I think probably staff will come back and say 2025, and that's probably pressing, but, you know, let's look at it. How quickly can we do proper community engagement? Put that as a priority in our strategic plan for this committee. I'm very supportive, but yeah, no, I think the risk is to actually lose people, and partly why it's important to keep people on board is because, as Director Grief said, the opportunity is to resolve sewage, you know, and if we're going to do that and connect other residents, it is a bit of a slower process, but that's how you get your assent eventually. You know, you talked about the failed referendum back in the day, and I think looking at the opportunity for LWMP for the whole area at the same time as we embark on the LEP, it's going to create better value in the future. Because otherwise, if we don't do that, we'll end up back with a referendum on this thing.
Director Grief.
Well, that begs the question, how much patience does the proponent have? I mean, you got to wait for another bus? You've had to do that, wait for another bus to come by. You know, it's not guaranteed. So, I mean, you know, when you have willing partners, why not proceed? You can always amend, change. You're not revising a bylaw because there is no bylaw. So it's an open slate as far as I can see. And when you send it out for referrals, I want to hear from my APC what their first blush is on it. I would even recommend we send it to the BCOB because I want to hear from my fellow director north of the Oyster, because it would definitely impact his district as well. So I don't know. Is there a plan A and a half, something we can move forward on, so we don't absolutely lose the interest of all the business partners? I mean, how patient are people? How patient is the bank? I guess I don't want to put anybody on the spot out there, but, you know, I would suggest that we maybe just, indulging in a fantasy planning exercise. If we don't have the partners and the do-re-mi to make it happen, we can say all we want, it won't happen.
Director.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Dr. Grieve, and I very well know the risks and dance with partners in the South. I have two, with KFN and with Union Bay Estates. And I also realize the context today is everybody is telling us to build faster. So it is grating that, those risks are very real of them walking away. But I think the other risk I'm trying to balance is to keep investing and then finally arrive at a denial at the end. That's not good either. So, I think hopefully if we can, and when you say what can we do, your 1A or your 1B, today I would be quite willing to pass a resolution or to explore that on the new business to really put some framework around that local area plan and consideration of LWMP by our next meeting or the meeting after, just so that we start looking at some timelines. I'm not the developer, so I don't know the level of patience, whether they have patient capital on this. I think either way is going to take a long time on a project like this, but I think keeping community on side, having a strong LEP, having a strong sense of what the costs, what the terms will be around sewage for those who would like to connect into that system. There's nothing lost here today by denying this and proceeding with those other two pieces, in my opinion. So that would be my 1A, 1B to under the business to really direct staff to put pedal to the ground on these those community processes.
If I could add just a little bit more with regards to the comment of a 1A or a 1B. I think, again, going back to the report and looking at the commitment from staff to develop a scope of work for Saratoga and the settlement of local area plan for 2024. It states here that staff will present the scope to the committee for consideration. The scope will include consideration of housing legislation and housing needs, report impacts, servicing background studies, infrastructure needs, coastal and riverine flood risk assessments, environmentally sensitive areas, and will include community engagement in the development of the plan. Staff suggests that this exercise will include a comparative analysis of various growth scenarios for the Saratoga settlement node based on the carrying capacity that is identified through the above noted study work and community input. So again, a lot of this work, Edwin, how I look at it is going to be worked on in 2024 and hopefully the early part of 2025. But I think with staff being able to complete this particular report, I think it helps the developer moving forward down the road. So those are just some of my thoughts right now with regards to, I think there's a commitment from the CBRD right now based upon what I'm reading in the report with regards to a settlement or sorry, a scope of work for the Saratoga area to be completed by 2025. Well, hopefully early 2025. Director Green?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With the greatest respect, I would suggest that this work should have been done years ago. But I do thank the developer for coming forward because it has focused minds on the LAP finally. So I look forward to definitely getting a local area plan together that goes in the abundance of consultation, where everybody gets a chance to weigh in on every issue. So, if it's like I said, I'm worried about the potential of losing momentum. I think when you live in the world of the public sector, it's a different set of criteria and priorities than when in the private sector. So, I mean, it's all well and fine unless the money doesn't hold up. And as I said, then it'll be an exercise in fantasy dreaming.
Thanks for your comments. Again, how I'm looking at this thing right now is I don't see, I see a potential for the developer and the Comox Valley Regional District to work collaboratively together. And to not only work collaboratively together, but also maybe going in as one group, moving forward with senior government to ensure that, you know, whatever boxes that need to be ticked off in the future can be ticked off in the future and hopefully done in a quick manner. I see that there is a lot of potential here. There's a lot of passion. And I would encourage our developers just to maintain a little bit of patience and continue to work with staff and to continue to work with the community on moving this project forward. I think there's a lot of opportunities here. And I don't see us throwing the baby out with the bathwater here. Thanks. So I guess we're at a point now where unless there's any more comments or questions or thoughts, we'll vote on receipt. So I'll just give the directors about another 30 seconds or so to decide if there's any other comments or questions that need to be put forward right now for voting on receipt. Not seeing any, we'll vote on receipt. All in favor? So right now, I guess after receipt, we can go to recommendation and vote on recommendation. That was in the report. So
So just to be clear, that would be the recommendation from the April 2nd staff report that the application to rezone the property be denied.
I'll second the recommendation. All in favor of the recommendation? Those opposed? Carried. We'll take a short 5-minute break. Thanks.
Okay, this meeting is still ongoing of the Electoral Area Services Committee. And we're on a number 5, residential density in exceptional zones, report for receipt. Move a second on receipt, over to the CO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jody McLean, our senior planner, will again introduce the staff report, residential density in exception zones. So Jody, over to you.
Thank you. So since the housing related changes were made to the Local Government Act, the planning department has been reviewing the zoning bylaw to assess any necessary changes. So a zoning bylaw, as you know, allows a community to regulate its own land use and density. But the Local Government Act sets the rules for what can be regulated and how, and includes standards that need to be met. So one of these new standards is that, so where a residential use is permitted, but that residential use is restricted to only a single detached dwelling, now the zoning bylaw must also allow for an additional housing unit on the same lot. While the CVRD's rural residential zones already allow this, it was identified that some of the exception zones do restrict housing to a single detached dwelling. Most often, this is the result of using a provision of the Local Government Act called the subdivision to provide residence for a relative, or it's called section 514 of the Local Government Act. So that section allows a subdivision approving officer to approve a subdivision where a lot is less than the zone's minimum lot size if certain residency requirements are met. However, the use of that zone still does require an amendment to the zoning bylaw to enable it. And that is a case-by-case discretionary decision. The board can approve it or refuse it or put conditions on it. And at the same time, the same rules apply. It's the same rules prevent the regional district from adopting a zoning amendment that is not consistent with the official community plan. Because some of the OCP designations include minimum lot sizes, density targets, these exception zones we've been doing cut in half the permitted residential density. So 2 houses to 1, making the subdivision like density neutral. It achieved the objectives of the applicants while remaining consistent with the intentions of the official community plan. And without it, amendments to the official community plan would likely have been necessary. So this happened 6 times. Plus, this draft bylaw in front of you there includes 2 other similar exceptions where the same outcome occurred, but were unrelated to the subdivision for a relative part. Regardless, the new legislation states specifically that we must undo this density restriction despite any conflict with the official community plan. So, Mr. Chair, that is what this draft bylaw does. This draft bylaw is not consistent with the official community plan, and we are prohibited from holding a public hearing. The rules for what a zoning bylaw can do have changed, and we are directed to bring the zoning bylaw into compliance with those new rules. We just need to do the newspaper notice between now and the regional board meeting when, Mr. Chair, the bylaw can be given first 3 readings. Thank you.
Any questions from directors? Director Arbor.
That's like an odd staff report. In the sense we're being told, you know, we're amending something that will be in contravention of our official community plan. But I guess the next question is, when are we gonna bring, I guess we're gonna have to move upwards and amend our OCP so it becomes conforming with now our land use bylaw. So and that process for the OCP, when are we looking to know we've initiated, we've put it on the horizon, but we're not quite there yet in terms of. And we also have other items in the OCP that we want to touch on that. So I'm just wondering about the timing, how long we're going to remain inconsistent between our land use bylaw and our OCP. And whether the province is going to start writing OCPs for communities, that would be the next logical step as well.
Alana, I see you've come to the table for the question around the OCP.
Thanks. Through James and the chair to the directors. So on your last question, the province will help communities that don't have land use plans in place. So we're not one of them, fortunately. On this item, probably the amendment to the OCP would just be recognizing that there is the provision for subdivision for a relative, which we do already have some policy language around. The OCP needs to be updated to comply with the new legislation by we'll be working on it by the end of this year. And that's just a statutory requirement. So for the most part, our OCP is compliant with the legislation, and we'll just have a review on this specific piece. One thing that, we talked about, how would we going forward talk to you about those kinds of subdivisions when they come to you and you still want to consider them? And we think we have a plan for that. So this isn't necessarily the end for subdivision for a relative, if that is something that, in future you're considering site-specific applications.
Another question, Director Harper?
No, this one's more a comment because all the media are watching us and we'll be in the news tomorrow, but no, they never watch us. Wait a minute. But it's funny because the province is really dictating the terms on a lot of issues and without necessarily strong evidence that it's going to pan out, because I think what we're starting to see last week, for example, that only Victoria out of the 10 cities that they named as priority cities for growth met their targets, and Oak Bay had a target of like 100 units and they had 7 built. And I think the comment from the mayor was correct. He says, well, we can speed up our approvals, we can do all these things, but we're not the people that invest to build the homes. We're not the private markets. And I think a lot of the policies that we're seeing have this kind of magical assumption that that us really loosening our grip on our zoning will necessarily lead to more houses, and second, to affordable houses. So I don't know. I'm still a fan of this government, but when I see stuff like this, where you start putting us in a situation where, they're really getting down in the weeds in imposing these types of things around land use planning, and I think they're totally in the weeds, and they're starting to lose sight of the big picture around their role in addressing the housing crisis. So I don't know. I'm quite happy to pass it because it sounds like we have no choice. Question to staff, what would happen if we refuse to pass this?
Through the chair to the directors, I'm sure there will be communities that find themselves on the other side. And so we'll see how the province responds. And I would just suggest to you that we don't need to be that community.
Through the chair, it sounds like staff just challenged us to not be brave. Be careful with that because, do we want to be a community out front picking a fight with local government, not a rural community? I think that I think if we were a bit bigger municipality, we will start to see pushback, I think, as some of those policies don't actually pan out. And I'll leave it at that.
Any other comments, Director? Well, it's all about comfort and control, and whoever has it. And at the end of the day, as you say, I just made that point that the sensitivity and sensibilities of the private sector are not those of the public sector. They're quite removed and seem to be widening all the time. So Yeah, when you do wonder though, when a government rushes through a whole raft of bills, and it seems to me they do the referral process after assent. Then they go out to the public. This is what we have. So I guess the only thing that really makes a difference is the fact that there's always election time. So anyway, so nothing else further on that. So on receipt. All in favor? Ta-da. And the recommendation as is outlined there. Bylaw 828. Rural Community Zoning Bylaw 520-2019 be amended to permit the residential density required by the Local Government Act and be given first, second, and third reading concurrently. I suppose that's at the board, right? That comes up tomorrow. Okay. So that's the recommendation. Anyone want to move it? Director? And I'll second it. Did you want to speak to it? Director Arbor?
Oh, Dr. Greer, I think you walked into it because you've talked about quite a few times this term that you would never pass first, second, and third reading ever again. I'm just pointing that out for your pleasure. In the same meeting. Oh, had we done the final at the time? I'm not sure we had. Yeah.
I think we did that during COVID, didn't we? Are we still allowed to do that?
Yeah.
Under the regulation, we can still do that. Feel the power. Could have a bad day, you never know. Okay, so the recommendation is on the table. No more discussion. Anyone opposed to the recommendation? You're opposed? Okay, that carried. What if I wanted to be strategic and post it too? Then we'd be in a pickle. Okay, Mount Washington short-term rental accommodation service zoning amendment for receipt. Second receipt and over to CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Stephanie Pollock, our planner, will be introducing the staff report on the Mount Washington short-term rental accommodation and zoning amendment. So Stephanie, over to you.
Thank you. Through the CAO to the chair and directors, this zoning amendment is proposed to permit the principal use of short-term rental accommodations in dwelling units within the residential accommodation and resort facilities districts within the Mount Washington Comprehensive Development Zone. Currently, zoning within the resort accommodation district does not permit short-term rental accommodation service other than in the form of a bed and breakfast as an accessory use to the principal residential use. Without this rezoning, short-term rentals other than in the form of a B&B require a site-specific approval, so either in the form of an amendment to the property zoning or a TUP, a temporary use permit. Tourist accommodation and residential use are already permitted principal uses in the resort facilities district. Adding Mount Washington short-term rental accommodation service enables the short-term rental use in residential dwelling units. As an example, both Bear Lodge and Deer Lodge are within the RF district, both of which have units listed on Airbnb. The zoning amendment also proposes to remove hostel, lodge, and resort condominium from the list of permitted uses in the resort facilities district. The reason for this removal is that the three uses are already captured within the definition of tourist accommodation, which is listed as a permitted principal use in the RF district. So operators of tourist accommodation in the form of a hostel, lodge, or resort condo will not see any change to their use permissions resulting from this amendment. The Mount Washington Integrated Resort Community Plan provides a policy basis for enabling short-term accommodation rentals on Mount Washington, where the resort destination-related context is unique. Mount Washington is designated by the province as one of 44 mountain resort and ski areas that are exempt from the principal residence requirement as significant tourism economic contributors to the regions and to the province. Staff are proposing this amendment in anticipation of the province launching its registry early in 2025, which will require platforms to remove listings without valid provincial registry numbers. And staff recommends proceeding with external agency at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Any questions? Director Harbour.
Yeah, thanks. I'm supportive of this. I'm just wondering how that fits with what we saw happening. I mean, maybe staff can't speak on it because I don't expect you to follow everything, but what happened in Parksville, and there was basically a lot of resorts, and mayor and council had to fight in order. Yeah, I see some nodding, but then I'll just speak about it where the province really put some rules around short-term rentals in an area that has been doing them, but all of a sudden they couldn't. So I guess the broader question is, the more pertinent question is, are we going to learn anything from this change as we look to potentially to short-term rental in the rest of the Comox Valley Regional District? So I think the committee has talked about trying to have a look. I'm not sure if we have officialized that or whether we're saving this for a discussion at strategic planning, but I'm just wondering if this policy regarding Mount Washington could inform efforts in other areas of the regional district.
I think Tom, feel free to weigh in, but I think all I would say is that the experiences in other jurisdictions are certainly being looked at and understood, and where they are relevant and can be applied to our rural areas, we'll give those consideration and bring them forward to the board as needed. Yeah, as you know, the focus of this particular report is around Mount Washington. But Tom, if you've got anything else on the other jurisdictions.
Through the CEO to the chair and directors, that's a really good question, Director Arbor. The plan for the 2024 is that staff would be documenting and observing the changes that's happening in other jurisdictions, but also in the electoral area. Where we want to see what the community is wanting to do, but also we have received a couple applications for a temporary use permit for STRs, short-term rentals. And from there, we can observe and move forward with possible changes to the zoning bylaw in the future.
Yeah, thanks for that feedback and additional information against where I understand what item we're on, but I think it's good to think about the downstream impact because people in the short-term vacation rentals sector will look at what we're doing on Mount Washington as they are looking at what we might be doing on Hornby, and it's interesting to hear that we got a couple of TUPs come in because historically people have not really utilized that tool for STVR, and I know we may be able to consider business licensing, anyways, let's not open the whole floodgate. I'll save it for when the report comes back. But for today, I think what I'm hearing is this is basically just a technical rejigging. It doesn't change the use that people have. It's just more around, and probably oversimplifying, but just a language of how we describe the activity.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I guess one thing I can share with the directors is through our home occupation application, which is a zone compliance letter to the applicants, we are seeing an increase in bed and breakfast proposal. Staff is documenting that information to see if they meet our home occupation bed and breakfast regulations per the zoning bylaw.
Any other questions? All this talk of bed and breakfast makes me want a nap and a lunch, but not than that, we're good. So we're on receipt of the report. Thank you very much, Stephanie. And call the question on receipt. Anybody opposed? That carries. And motion to put forward a recommendation. Moved and seconded. Director Hardy?
Yep, second.
Second. Okay, so first and seconded, and no more discussion around the table. Call a question on that. Anyone opposed? That also carries. Now, the invasive plant species management. This sounds very onerous for sure. It's a report dated April 11th for receipt. It's only a report. So I'll move receipt and second it. And over to staff for introductions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mark Hart, our Parks Planner, will be introducing the staff report on the invasive plant species management program at CVRD.
Thank you very much. Thank you through the CAO. Just a reminder that this report comes as a request from this committee from October 16th, 2023. It's for information purposes, and I will try to be brief. So the request was for staff to come back to the committee with some information about how it manages invasive species in the regional district. And so the response is that we have 4 primary tools that we use to manage invasive species. The primary one being the Weed Control Service Function 296, which has a roughly $65,000 annual budget. It includes contracts, service contracts, and operation funding for species, invasive species education and removal. Similarly, we have 3 park services, as you're aware, in the rural areas, and those have a component of invasive species removal as well. Typically around $19,000 a year in the annual budget to do species removal in the parks and beach accesses. The CVRD typically at its facilities sets aside money for invasive species management at the water treatment plant, the waste facilities, and so on. And that budget's typically about $12,000 a year. And finally, we have the Regional District Weed Control Regulation Bylaw from 2001. And it's intended to manage invasive species on private lands. And we'll be talking a bit more about that in a subsequent companion report. But big picture takeaway is the CVRD spends about $110,000 annually on invasive species management and education, which includes a $14,000 approximately contribution from other levels of government. Thank you.
I noticed there's no morning glory in there, you know, they're possible to kill those things. Or Scotch broom. Director.
Yeah, thanks. I'm glad to see the information come here, and just that did come up during the budget process and around beach accesses, which we allocated a little bit of funding for, and it's good to have that fuller picture of how much we're spending on it. Can you speak about do we have any idea how much the province is spending in that area, say in the Comox Valley, around weed control? Any kind of range? Because I know they have efforts and sometimes they have spraying, which are not very popular with residents. But do we have any idea of the provincial and federal role in weed control in our region? Because I'd imagine the budgets might be quite a bit higher, or we simply have no idea.
Mark.
Yeah, through the chair. We don't have any numbers, but I know the province, through the Ministry of Transportation, they do invasive control work within the highway dedication. And then the province locally here, I know they do Spartina work, but I'm not sure of numbers associated with that.
So if I may, because of that, as any regions around BC, or would there be any value in looking at doing shared strategic planning between everybody that spends in that space? Because, you know, weeds that end up in our parks end up on the beach, end up, and you know, so on federal, across provincial, federal, local government, and I don't know how we go about prioritizing or doing, you know, species don't really regard jurisdictions and lines, so I'd be curious to see if there'd be value in doing shared strategic planning around weed control.
Yeah, I mean, through the chair, I think something like that would be might be resource heavy for us at the moment. We have limited park staff and limited resources. I think what you're talking about is more of a regional service that gets shared amongst others. I don't know if we're in a position staff wise to take something like that on.
And I'm not sure if it would help Mark to speak to the relationship that we do have with the Coastal Invasive Species Committee, the more super regional approach to some of the work around invasive species. So there's already some collaborative effort there, but do you want to speak to that relationship and how we line up with their work?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. Through the CAO to the chair. Yeah, we do have through the CALL program, which is the Coastal Invasive Species program that manages that program for us, then the Not on My Property program. So that is the coastal invasive species do manage throughout the whole island, and they do prioritize weeds and throughout the whole island. So yeah, that collaborative work does happen.
All right, so back to receipt. No questions? Anyone opposed? That carries. And recommendation 1?
Number 7.
Oh, sorry, there's no receipt, just receipt. Okay, now we're on 8. I'm sorry, I'm ahead of myself. Proposed electoral area weed control bylaw number 764 for receipt. And back over to the crew.
So
and Amanda.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So through the chair, again, this is the companion to the former report. We brought this, Parks brought this forward in 2023, October 16th, and are bringing it back again. The recommendation is that we repeal and replace the existing weed control bylaw. There's 2 primary reasons. That the most important one is a housekeeping function. That bylaw is from 2001 and no longer applies to, or the CVRD no longer has jurisdiction over some of the areas to which it refers. The second piece, which is also important, is a process clarification, which gives the public a bit more clarity on how the bylaw can be enforced and how the public can engage with the bylaw. The second recommendation is that we increase that we subsequently amend the ticketing bylaws to increase fines associated with the with invasive species management on private lands. And that increase would be from $100 to $500. Thank you.
Again, complaint driven, right? Director Armour.
Yeah, thanks. I'd love to hear the rationale for it. I think the last time we were on the weed control bylaw before budget or at budget, I made the comment that we don't necessarily ourselves do a spot up job. I mean, we do what we can in our parks and then severely controlled lands, but I did talk about that right away, that it was absolutely taken over in Craig Darroch. And it looks like we haven't done any weed control activity. So my question is, are we going to fine ourselves $500? And so I'm just wondering about the rationale for penalizing or increasing that amount at a time where people are really facing a lot of, the affordability crisis, et cetera. How much of the budget comes from fines and how much comes from requisition?
Amanda?
Yeah, to the CEO, to the chair. Currently, we are complaint driven through the bylaw enforcement process. We receive on average 3 weed type complaints a year annually. And it's been like that on average for the past 10 years. 3 a year. 3 a year, sorry. So to date, I believe any fines that have been issued under the $100 when folks have cleaned up typically we'll give them a time frame to clean up. Once the cleanup has been complete, the fine has been reduced to a warning. The 100 to 500 was keeping in line with our other direct enforcement type fine amounts where we've asked failing to clean up on an unsightly premise or working beyond a stop work order and a building permit. It's when that direction's been provided and they failed to do so when the fine comes in, we've increased from 100 to 500 some time ago on our other bylaws. So this one coming forward on a housekeeping, we actually did have a fairly large cleanup last year. It was on Hornby. And realized that the bylaw was outdated and needed to be repealed and replaced. That one ended up being a good story. The neighborhood actually participated and helped clean up that property, and we didn't move towards enforcement. We just realized at that time that it was time to have this bylaw updated. So the 100 to 500 is keeping in line with our other regulatory bylaws and enforcement bylaws. The $500 also, if paid, if we get to that stage, if paid within 14 days, is reduced to $375. And that's through our new adjudication ticketing bylaw. So there's an incentive to pay ahead, an incentive to comply within that 14. So it's set at 500, but we do have the ability, if paid before the 14, to reduce it to 375.
If I can just add to that, to your first question around the activities on CVRD lands, parks and otherwise, the staff report prior to this one on the invasive species program and the different services, that was intended to provide some context around the work that is being done. Of course, there's always more work that can be done, and we see that every spring as weeds continue to grow. But the report prior to tried to illustrate the efforts that are underway and ongoing.
And one more?
Yep. Thanks for the information. I do make a difference between, when we see it with our other bylaws and fines, I make a difference between whether you agree with me or not, between weeds and between somebody who's got, a total garbage property and nuisance and all that, where clearly the owner has full control around what they're doing. So if the committee is willing, I would like to make a small amendment, which would be to increase the fine from 100 to 500, but that instead of the 375, we keep it at $100. Is that amenable? Is that doable? Question to staff, is that doable?
It's actually outside of the scope. It's too much of a reduction. The most I can reduce through the Bylaw Enforcement Act is 25%. So we can work within that if you want it down to have the minimal at 100. Just that jump is too big, but 25% back to having the minimal set at 100, we can do.
Yeah, if the committee is willing, I would like to keep it at 100, so people, like, that's the kind of thing. If we're just doing it 3 times a year, somebody will come up and say, why that extra 400 on something that, yeah. Anyways, that'd be my preference. So then it'd be 100. Keep it at 100 at the fast pay, and then I guess it's 125, 130. My math, who can do 25% up from 100, because it's not the same.
Yeah, we can, I can't do that math either, but we can determine that. I think I understand the intent of you, Director Arbor,
Yeah.
if the committee supports that change.
Yeah.
And that would be a change to the recommendation number 2, I believe.
Yeah, I would propose that small amendment.
Okay, as you know, more discussion on receipt. Call a question, all in favor? There you go. And we have recommendation 1. Like 5.
That's recommendation 2.
That's recommendation 2 or 1? We'll do 1 first. So motion is seconded. Okay. So on recommendation 1, any opposed? Carries. And recommendation 2, over to Director Arbor.
I think our CFO, we're bringing out the big guns here just for a little quick piece of math, is working on it, but I would like to move recommendation 2, but instead of from $100, that we bring it to 100 and no, it didn't happen. Anyways, the 100 be the minimum, so it'd be 100 divided by the 25% there. So
Amanda?
Sorry. Yep.
Just to add for clarity, the amendment, there's 2 ticketing bylaws. The adjudication bylaw, one of the great appeals for us to implement that was to have that ability to reduce. For the municipal ticketing bylaw, there isn't that reduction. So for the recommendation, if you're wanting to just leave it at the 100 for the municipal, just to be specific in that, so we don't end up with, yeah, they're 2 different. But if you want the reduced for the adjudication, we use the adjudication 99% of the time if we were to ticket.
gotcha. I guess the other option is not to move the recommendation, just keep everything the same. Is there any reason why, is there other amendments in that particular motion that, other than the dollar value, that is pertinent to our decision?
With the old bylaw being repealed, there will be no ticketing ability on the weed control bylaw at all. So we need to just have that, the recommendation that the 2 ticketing bylaws be updated to reflect.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so I'll move that, and basically with no change in the amounts, the actual amounts. That's probably the simplest way to do, since I couldn't do the math on the $100.
So what be the proposal here again?
I
To
think-
leave it at 100?
So every time this is a painful item, this is the one to see, and I'm to blame this time. But I would just say, let's do the passing the necessary amendments to the following bylaw, but keeping the amounts the same. So I've moved off the going up the 25%, just keep the same amounts that were in the old ticketing bylaw.
I think the recommendation would be as on the screen, but the highlighted portion would be removed.
Yeah.
From the resolution.
Yeah, and not increase fees. That's correct. Well done. Thanks, CEO.
Do we have a seconder for that? And a question to Director Hardy.
Yeah, thanks. So again, if I'm understanding correctly, through the chair to James, regarding the change from 100 to 500 when we're looking at fining. Again, if I understand correctly from what the staff had stated, was again to maintain some continuity with regards to whether we're fining for invasive species, or if we're fining for this, or if we're fining for another infringement upon bylaws, etc., that they're all consistent and they all have the same fee. That's the purpose of recommendation number 2, is it not?
Just twofold. One is to update the municipal ticket information bylaw and the adjudication bylaw to reflect the new weed control regulation bylaw that was passed on recommendation 1. And then secondly is to increase the fine amount. So if the committee's not interested in increasing the fine amount and leaving it at 100, then we would still recommend that the 2 bylaws be adjusted to bring in the new regulations. I just won't increase the fine amount.
Thanks.
Sorry, we have the motion then on the floor with that deleted item on there. We haven't had a secretary yet. Make sure Director Hardy's okay.
What was recommended, and there's a proposal, right? For a change to the recommendation.
Yeah,
I'm trying to understand.
Yeah.
Director Arbor put forward recommendation 2, but without the highlighted portion there, the and to increase fines associated, without that highlighted portion.
So it remains the same as it was. Good. Okay, first and seconded then, on the recommendation 2 with the deleted portion in effect. So no basic change. Anyone opposed to that? Seeing none, that carries. And number 9, proposed amendments to the electoral area parks regulation bylaw. Report from April 30th regarding amendments to the electoral areas parks regulation bylaw for receipt. Move a second and receipt, and over to Mark.
Thanks, and Mark Hart will be introducing this this report as well under the electoral areas parks regulations. Mark.
Thank you. Through the chair, this committee is probably well aware that these reports, these park regulations bylaw reports typically come in the fall. This one's coming a little early as a special treat for you. Partly to acknowledge a recent acquisition that the service made at 2364 Catherwood Road, which Parks Department is proposing we refer to as Conservation Area 9836 until a final name can be confirmed in consultation with the Comox First Nation. We further recommend that the park be added to Schedule B as part of a Dogs on Leash park. 2 other amendments that we're proposing in the report are to add the one spot trail extension from Spike Road towards Endall Road. It's a 4.5 kilometer trail extension. The CVRD has a license of occupation over that unopened road dedication to operate a trail. And adding it to our bylaw will allow us to enforce the bylaw's regulations. And a third amendment would be, is largely a housekeeping matter to add Wildwood Marsh to Appendix A. The service has been operating the marsh since 2004. And recently it came to our attention that the marsh was not listed in our Schedule A. So we'd like to add that now. Thank you.
Questions? Sounds cut and dry to me. Okay, so on receipt. Any opposed? Seeing none, that carries. And we have a whole bunch of recommendations. Sorry. Mark?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to note that in recommendation number 1, the first block, we'd like to add and requiring leashing of pets to that first block recommendation in recommendation number 1, which will allow us to deal with unleashed dogs within the park. We could add that in.
Sorry, if I could just clarify, Mark,
Yeah.
I think there is a recommendation number 4 on the staff report that does make mention of Schedule B, Section 2, and notes the conservation area in that dogs on leash park area. Does that capture the intent? Is that 4th recommendation?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, sorry, I didn't see that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it was a bit of a mix up on the
Thanks.
report that came forward there. So I think it's covered off there in the 4th recommendation.
So we're good on 1? We move it and second it? Okay, no discussion on 1. Anyone opposed? That carries. Move and second it on 2. Very near and dear to my heart. Any discussion? Seeing none, that carries. And recommendation number 3, please. Well, Wood Marsh. Another beloved area C. No discussion. Any opposed? That carries. And finally, 4. Move to second on 4. Any discussion on 4? Seeing none. All in favor? That goes. Operational update. And over to Mark.
Thank you. And through the chair to the directors, there is a PowerPoint if you want to bring that up for me, please, Lisa. It should be in the file folder. In the SharePoint folder. Yeah, I can guess. Well, Director Hardy's not here.
Okay, we're going to take the opportunity to actually take a recess for lunch, seeing as though we're recessing anyway. And after all, it is time. It's 12 o'clock on the button, and my internal clock tells me it's lunch. So we'll take 20 minutes and have a working lunch. Okay, call this meeting back to order of the Electoral Area Services Committee. And we are on the Royston Seaside Trail viewing platform options. Beg pardon?
Number 10.
Oh, operational update. I'm sorry, I missed these committee parks operational update, and move a seat, and Mark has a little presentation for us.
Thank you through the chair to the directors. Just wanted to provide an operational update and kind of focus on the large capital projects that we're working on. And then at the end, I'm happy to take any questions about any of the other park projects that we might have going on at the time. So, oops. So I just want to concentrate on these kind of 5 items to start. So let's, in terms of the Lazo Greenway, the tender for construction has been issued, and that tender closes on May the 23rd. So we're looking probably to award that construction contract in early June. We do have a memorandum of understanding that's been signed off with the town of Comox in terms of the cost sharing for the grant. And that construction is going to occur at the same time as the sewer conveyance project. So the sewer conveyance project will take precedence over that. But we're hoping to have some kind of project synergies there to minimize the impacts on the public through that construction. In terms of the Dyke Road, so I just want to kind of give you a little bit of a snapshot. This is a little conceptual plan of what the Dyke Road Park could look like. We're looking to reduce the parking area, create a one-way in, one-way out parking scenario. We're looking to green shores the coast, so we want to remove the platform. So we're looking to remove that platform end of July, early June, and that'll allow us to do further archaeological work underneath the platform area. So we are looking to close the park in end of May, and we're looking to do construction here 2024 through to 2025 in coordination with the sewer conveyance project. The Denman CIT, we've restarted work from the Owl to Gravelly Bay trail work. That started again up on May 1st, following a brief pause in that work. We've got the targeted completion to be September of 2024. Shingle Spit, we're working on the design, permits, and approvals, and we are working with Comox First Nation and Hira on that project. We do have a planned open house on May the 22nd through in coordination with the Hira committee. And then finally, just in terms of management plans, we do have a few management plans kind of ongoing. We are looking to do the Nymph Falls management plan update this year and do a management plan for the Spike Road Park. Some of the other ones, like our recent Catherwood acquisition, and then the Maris property, we'll probably be looking at trying to get the background information collected this year, but moving more into the management planning process for those 2 parks in 2025. So happy to take any questions if you have anything in terms of operational questions for parks.
Director Arbor.
Yeah, thanks for the update. Comprehensive and short, and operational. I always, like most politicians, I always go to the capital side. So it's good to hear the operation, but there's always some components around the project. The Cross Island Trail, it's good. It's good that it's advancing, and there's a lot of enthusiasm. Just a heads up. There's a couple of people on Denman that are asking me about with anticipation that we will complete that huge section. People are starting to talk about the big hill again, and I know that's a tough one, but as we work to improve our relationship with Ministry of Transportation or enhance our relationship with Ministry of Transportation. I think I realize this may be many years away from a solution, but I think that's something I'll probably bring back in how, as we finish this latest project of having that look at the Big Hill again. I know there was an effort around 2010 or something like that to look at it, and there's a lot of constraints and reasons why it's not improved, but a lot of it has to do with cost too, which I think we would need a senior government partner. Shingle Spit Boat Launch is also good. So yeah, from my area, it's good to see the progress. And for Hornby, I don't have too much more. There are some questions around just from a couple of residents around additional roadside trails, and we don't really have a network plan for Hornby to the extent where the CIT on Denman is really providing that backbone like that. And I think, people are happy with the rest, but on Hornby, I think there's starting to be some requests as well. So maybe we'll want to have I think part of our staff is already in touch on some of those issues, but no, overall, it's good. I think the Park Service is doing good. And I want to thank again staff for the preparation of the report last month. Looking at the financial picture and at budget time, and that was a useful report. So that's me. Good job. Thanks.
Party. Okay. My question is around two things. Marist Park, are we looking just for trails through there? Is that what we're basically looking at? I guess we have to make a plan, but my understanding is it's a pretty static park, right? We're not going to put out outhouses maybe, but that's about it. Is that right?
Yeah, through the chair, we're quite restricted on what we can do with that park because we did receive it through an ecological gift. So anything that we propose to do on to that site, we'd need to get approval, like through the federal environmental agency. But I think what would probably likely happen is just very minimal trail network probably within that park. Again, we're just doing the background and doing all the analysis this year, and we can look to engage through the management planning process in 2025.
Splendid, thank you. Any other comments? We're just on receipt, right? So, no further discussion. Anybody opposed to receipt? And that carries. Now we're on the Seaside Trail. Moving second on receipt and back over to Mark, I guess.
Thank you. And through the chair to the directors, just want to present some options for the Royston Seaside Trail. It's kind of what happened there. Oh, there we go. The platform really is a historical marker in Area A. It's the start of what used to be the Royston Wharf. You can see that historical picture from 1968 in the black and white. And then what we have currently today is just basically a small little platform that kind of just shows the very start of that wharf. That wharf was removed in 2003. And then the current viewing platform was built at that time. In 2012, part of that platform was very much damaged during a storm event. And in 2013, we had part of it replaced. Just earlier this year, we had another engineering assessment of the structure, and it's showed some substantial decay in the timbers and severe widespread decay, as well as visible sag within the substructure. So at this point, we've got a few options on what we can do to kind of move forward with this structure. We can do a full structure replacement at a cost of approximately $170,000. That'd be $145,000 for construction, and then additional $15,000 for permits and assessments. That would require an additional $100,000. So right now we have 10,000 in 2024, and we have 60,000 in 2025 in our budget to work towards some kind of replacement or repair on this for the viewing platform. That full replacement would involve basically updating the substructure, so Pier 1 and Pier 2 with steel components, and would involve replacing the stringers, the decking, and the railing. The second option we could do is do a short-term repair. The cost of that would be approximately 25,000. So we could use that 60,000 that's allocated in 2025 to make that repair. And what that would be basically replacing the Pier 1 cap beam and the span 1 stringer, and then reusing the decking rails and the current railings. Or third option, we can just completely remove the structure. That would probably cost us about 35,000 because we'd still need permits and to do proper assessments. So I just want to leave that with you. Right now, staff are recommending a full structure replacement. So working on the necessary approvals and permits in 2024, and then bringing back the extra monies, the additional 85,000 to be looked at as part of the 2025 to 2029 financial planning process. Happy to take questions.
Questions from Director Arbor?
Yeah, thanks to staff for their analysis on that. I'm obviously supportive of the full structure replacement. I think that's a huge community amenity for Royston, and it's something that people enjoy and have missed since we've had to basically shutter access to it. So I would very much like to proceed with the replacement. And if the operational funding are not sufficient, or depending on when the more detailed budget come in, I'd be quite willing to put some of my community works fund into the project as well to make sure that gets done. I do have a couple of questions around the plan. So I really like what we did with the Denman stairs being close to the ocean. So the use of yellow cedar, and was it reinforced? Was it steel or it was aluminum we used in that instance?
Aluminum.
So is there an opportunity to take the same approach with the Royston structure, longer lasting, close to the seashore, always in the elements? It seems to me like going aluminum, yellow cedar would be like the winning combination. I think that's why we did that on Denman. I don't know if staff, and I realize it's probably a little more costly, so I don't know if staff wants to feedback on whether that has been considered.
Yeah, through the chair, I'm not exactly sure if that has been considered. The recommendation from the engineers was to replace the Pier 1 and Pier 2, which are timber, with steel columns, which is what is in the 3rd and 4th piers, and then the substructure in timber. But we can definitely look at options to have those in aluminum. So we can report back to the engineers. That might add to the cost.
That would be great, and I'll pass it to Director Hardy, but I will have one more item related to no, it's okay, because my next item is around the boat launch in Royston, which is somewhat related, so I'll just pass it to Director Hardy.
Okay, Director Hardy.
Yeah, thanks. I'd be in favor of the removal of the structure. And my reason being, again, let's go back to allowing that area to go conform to it, the natural state of where it was, 50 plus years ago or 100 plus years ago. Again, if we're looking about maintaining the environmental and sustainability of the area, well, let's remove that structure and allow environment to do its course there. So that would be my comment with it. I know there's probably some concerns with regards to the community being able to go and meet somewhere, but I think with the barbecue pit and picnic area that you have just a couple of 100 meters away from that particular site, there's still that area for the community to meet and host events, etc. So I'd be in favor of removing the structure myself. Thanks.
Are we still on the same structure? Okay, back over to Director. There you go.
Okay, thanks. And thanks for the comment, Dr. Ali. Obviously, we're at the opposite poles on that one, but I think it's always good to hear your rationale. Yeah, interesting. I think that structure, I mean, that structure is used quite a bit for pictures for viewing, as staff says. It's not like there's a lack of use. I also understand your comment around returning to natural state. Has staff had any kind of community engagement on this, or it's basically, you know, we clearly haven't updated that structure over time, but have we had any community engagement around or analysis around use?
Through the chair to Director Arbor, we haven't actually engaged the community directly on this. We've approached it as an operational issue. Basically, we have a structure that's there, and we're just looking at asset management, basically, and with that replacement. So no, we haven't gone to the community to do engagement specifically.
Okay, and maybe one more. Have we done any analysis? Because obviously we're in the flood zone there, so into the long-term projections according to our floodplain mapping and all the rest of that. And do we have information that if we did a full structure replacement, you know, the time window within the 80 years, that we're okay from a height perspective?
That analysis wasn't done as well.
Okay, so because Dr. Hardy has concerns, maybe I'll say that we might want to consider those couple of things, which may inform us a little more. I'll pass it back to the chair and to Dr. Hardy. Thank you very much. And Director Hardy?
Yeah, thanks. And again, just appreciating the comment from staff regarding the protection of the asset at Royston with regards to a bird lookout in an area where, you know, photos of the water and wildlife, et cetera, can be taken. I'd just like to add that we do have another asset that's being worked on and improved upon over on the Dyke Road Park project, where that same type of asset is being put in place and rebuilt over at the Dyke Road. So that ability to go and take pictures of wildlife, water, mountains, et cetera, is still being undertaken at Dyke Road Park project if the removal of the structure at Royston takes place. Thanks.
Okay, so yeah, two options. I guess the third option we didn't talk about was just repair what's there for now. And I guess that is another option worth considering, because it will give you time to decide what you want to do in the long haul. I don't know if anybody remembers the day when there was the fuel dock there. It was it went right out into the deep water because they could bring barges in, and I guess they had a tank farm and they pumped out hydrocarbons. So those days are long gone. But I don't know if Director Hardy might remember this one day as an April Fool joke. The local newspaper published a front page story about the fact that they were going to build a bridge from the Royston Pier all the way across to the Spit. And people took it seriously. So, but yeah, it's been there for as long as I can remember. Probably, well, when did it go in the 40s or 50s, 30s, probably, right? You know, originally. But so there is a third option, that's just maintain status quo. And if we did that, what kind of life expectancy would we be looking at? Maybe 10 years, 15 years, kind of a situation, just replacing the steel and a couple of the railings and whatever.
Yeah, the second option is really just to replace the Pier 1 cap and to replace the first span stringers.
Just the first one, okay.
Yeah, but the other stringers are still decaying as well, and that doesn't address the issue of the piers, which are the first two piers are timber piers. So it's really hard to say what the lifespan of a short repair would be, but I would think it'd be more in the range of 5 years maximum.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
That's hardly cost effective. Thanks. So we're on receipt. Oh, sorry, Director Arbor, you can see there.
Yeah, thanks. Just, I didn't expect a position to rebuilding, so I'm just gathering my thoughts. But I think that if we didn't rebuild it, I'm not the short-term repair. I think we just need to make a decision that that structure is really old. It's falling apart. I think if the decision was to remove the structure, we're gonna have some healthy delegations here of Roystoners that are come before us and asking for a replacement. This is on first pass, but I expect that this is a really appreciated amenity that completes the park and has some cultural value to people. So that's on first blush. And regarding the comment around Dyke Road, as we found out in the report 2 months ago, Area A pays for 30% of this service and we receive about 10% of the operations hours. So there's a deficit. And if I tell my Royston residents that they now have to get in their car and fight traffic to go watch birds at Dyke Road, where we would invest, I think the argument was purer when you said, let's return to nature. In that case, I would say, let's return Dyke Road to nature, right? And let's do it everywhere. I didn't like that comment, basically. I think that Roystoners have a great amenity. I don't want to take away from it. I would be willing to look at a bit of more feedback from the community and also to ensure that with the floodplain, it's okay, but I wouldn't just remove the structure just, without any rationale. I think we would end up with healthy delegations here for sure.
And Director Hardy?
Yeah, thanks. My apologies if I offended the Area A Director with regards to making mention of Comox Valley Regional District amenity at the Dyke Road Park, offending the folks in Area A. That wasn't my intention. The point that I was trying to make was if we're looking at it as an amenity, as was made mention of, then the Comox Valley Regional District has a similar amenity over at the Dyke Park project, and that's where I was going with that. So my apologies if there was some offense taken to my comment there. That wasn't my intention at all. But again, going back to my original comment, and I still stand behind that. Again, there's a lot of folks here in the Comox Valley that would appreciate the fact that no infrastructure not being there would again go back to its original state prior to colonialism or prior to a hydrocarbon facility that was put in place in that area. So with that being extracted, I think it would add to the space in and around that area. So if folks want to go about going to litigation with the Comox Valley Regional District because of the removal of a structure that wasn't there prior to colonialism, then so be it. Let's take that on. But again, there's a lot of folks within our community that appreciate green space and restoring green space. And to me, we're not restoring green space. We're putting a full structure in there. So those are just some of my comments. Thanks.
And Director Arbor?
Yeah, thanks. So I would say if, would staff be amenable? I don't want to vote on this one. It doesn't feel right. You know what I mean? Like I know which way to vote, probably Dr. Hardy as well. And I'm just wondering, we wouldn't do any building this summer if the decision was made today. So my question around timing, and if we didn't, could we do a little event just to poll people around the community, maybe put up a booth around the structure and preferences of people and just a little exercise like that? And do a bit more analysis. This also links, I still haven't brought up my second item on this regarding the boat launch, but there might be an opportunity to engage people around both topics. And I haven't situated the boat launch topic yet, but maybe we can just not make a decision today on it. We can also reflect and but I wonder if staff would have the bandwidth to consider some further analysis on this decision.
Yeah, through the chair, we could definitely take that on if that's what the committee would like us to do.
Okay, thanks. In that case, I'll just park that thought for now. And then what I'll say is there is a second issue in that neighborhood. And it is that structure is primarily a neighborhood facility, you know, like it's really people who walk down there and bring their, and there's high density of population. On the other side at Comox, everybody knows about the docks and everything else, right? So that's the area version of what the town of Comox has around a little bit of water infrastructure to be able to look at the ocean and wildlife. The second issue we have, though, which residents brought up recently, is around the boat launch and the small crafts boat launch. And there's a really concerning trend that's been happening pretty much in that area around Royston, which is an increase in people driving their cars unnecessarily onto the beach. And we're talking about, I think 10 days ago, there was a picture of like 10 pretty nice looking cars all at the lowest tides, all lined up for Instagram pictures or whatever they were doing there, and just driving over the shellfish areas and everything else. It's just, and I think residents are right to be really concerned, especially if that trend continues and increases. And on the other side, that lounge is also used for small craft boat lounge and things like that. So there is a historical use that is desirable. And so I've been mulling the last few days and told residents that maybe we could have a look. I know that the CVRD has had a look in the past and decided not to really more actively manage or our partners. And so I was going to ask today to see if we could collaborate with our partners just to review the status of management of the boat launch and some of the options that potentially could exist to dissuade undesirable uses and while maintaining the activities that are found low impact. And so now that we have this issue around the community not being unanimous around removing the structure, you know, I'm just wondering if we could just pause and maybe send staff back with consideration of those two things, maybe a deepening of the not a deepening, but basically consideration of a little bit of community engagement and options for that area a bit more comprehensively. So don't know if staff would be, and well, first of all, if the committee would be amenable to that. And then I would say we could defer unless, that my initial question, the timing of when a replacement would happen. If it's not happening this year, maybe we can take the time to, to do a bit of community consultation and options for the whole area, basically.
Yeah, through the chair, currently we have $60,000 in 2025 to work on the structure, but we would need more. So any kind of construction wouldn't happen until 2025. So this year in 2024, we could work on design, we could work on permitting, and we could work on approvals. But any kind of construction couldn't happen until 2025.
Director?
I can just to build a little bit on Mark's Mark's point, and the part around public engagement. Certainly, it sounds like we could probably accommodate something around that. I just like to remind the directors, as you well know, that when we do undertake public engagement, ensuring that there is that genuine response, that the options are open around whether it be replacement, removal, short-term fix, whatever the outcome is. We want to make sure that we have that interest to be able to follow through on whatever that public engagement might tell us. So it may be something that if the committee wants to not make a decision here today, it may be something that we might want to come back to the committee with in terms of a scope. It sounds like there is some time to make a decision on this in a more fulsome way. But we may want to come back to the committee on a scope of what that engagement might look like and what some of the interests are. And particularly if the boat launch is also part of that mix in terms of outreach.
Yeah, so I'd be in favor of that. And not making the decision today, and especially knowing that we wouldn't do the replacement this year anyway. So that's really good to know. The third leg that I would add, if we're going to ask for community engagement, is there is a very real opportunity that is more positive which is that in the fall/winter, we're gonna be building the active transportation, the Royston around the school, along the roadside, and the plan is to take it down Royston Road to Marine Drive over time. So I could see a table that talks about that project and what we're doing around active transportation, that talks about and seeks feedback on the structure, and that also talks about the boat launch. And coming into today, I had no idea that's where we would land in terms of as a potential place for community engagement. But you know, I think that would show a more comprehensive picture, because we don't engage often in Royston, to be honest. And I think it would be good for our parks/planning staff to have that discussion. And then at the committee level, we'll get all that feedback and we'll be able to make a more informed or a better community informed decision around that structure and options for the boat launch. So that'd be my preference for today, to basically just park the recommendation and make a new resolution to do that community engagement.
Thank you very much. I'm just thinking out loud that at one time I did live in Royston, and I did swim there, but it's pretty muddy and reedy until you get quite a ways out, right? So this barely is pretty well on the tidal area, isn't it? It doesn't really go out into deep water. So if you're talking about something you could launch kayaks or canoes off of or something like that, it would have to intrude even more into the water. But another option might be something more seasonal, like some kind of a float that could go there. But as you say, you know, it's really not prime swimming area. So, and a third option would be to avoid the foreshore altogether. And if you're going to build elevated platforms, maybe in that grassy area or something like that, so people can get a bit of a heads up and be able to see without actually intruding into the salt water, which I think might be more agreeable, because you're not really, you know, affecting the tidal area. So I take it we want to make a referral back to staff, or are you just going to let it go? Director?
No, if the committee is amenable, that I would make a new motion after receipt, which would basically not speak to this recommendation, but I'm sure we can craft some. I can propose something that captures our conversation and really to focus instead on a recommendation that staff works towards community engagement around the future of the viewing platform, of the boat launch, and connectivity, and active transportation connectivity around the village. We don't call it a village.
Do we need a motion for that?
Yeah, after receipt, I'm just situating.
You need a motion to
we're still on
do
receipt.
that work?
We're still on receipt right now.
Okay, so on receipt then, no further discussion on receipt. Any opposed? See none, so that carries. And are you ready to think on your feet, Director Arbor?
Okay, and for Lisa, I'll go slow. That staff works towards community engagement in Royston around the future of the viewing platform, of the boat launch, and active transportation amenities. See, now I'm tying parks and planning together. I'm breaking silos. It's fun.
So this is the idea is to gather community
input,
and it should also
into informing the committee around the future of that area, because really now it becomes a micro area planning, and so yeah,
including First Nation consultation.
Sure, it's still
if they have an interest in it.
So it's not second. I said that. No, yeah, it is, but I mean it in a good way. But it's not seconded yet. That's what I was thinking at the same time too.
Alrighty, defer to staff to work towards community engagement in Royston on the future of the viewing platform, the boat launch, and connectivity active transportation amenities. You want a reference to KFN there? Or is that captured in greater community? Or do you want a specific?
I think if the committee supports this wording, then staff would come back to the EASC with a scope to describe what that engagement looks like.
Okay. Oh, yeah, we did get a shirt, didn't we? Okay, RH is in there. Good. Okay, that pretty well settles it. And vote on that recommendation to defer. Any opposed? And that carries. So that brings us right out to Dem Harmony Shelter, doesn't it? That negates all those further. That's move receipt. Seconded. And who's feeling this one?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to introduce Doug DeMarzo, General Manager of Community Services, to present this report on the Denman Outdoor Shelter funding request.
Mm-hmm. Welcome, Douglas.
Thank you. Through the chair, this is follow-up to a delegation that appeared not too long ago to update us on the construction of the Denman Outdoor Shelter. During that time, they introduced a number of challenges they had financially to complete the project through to phase one. So this time we're recommending 20,000 from through the community facilities service, but from the remaining COVID-19 safe restart dollars to help complete the structure. We're proposing that they focus this money at least towards the new construction, which would be the cement and continuing to finish the pad and any gutters or facilities, as opposed to any outstanding bills. So it continues to move towards the end objection of phase one. And with that, there's some more information on the restart grants and other information in the report. But your other option, of course, is to look at potentially funding from the reserve function for this, or to deny the funding altogether. I think with that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Okay, Director Arbor.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm in favor of proceeding with the additional 20,000. I think some of us have seen the structure and it's really great. And we had a presentation from Dylan last meeting as well, and understand the challenges around costs for the construction. And I realize it's not, filling the full ask of what they need or what they would want. But I think that's a meaningful contribution to try to help complete the project, and hopefully they are successful in some of their other applications. So I'm in favor, and I still really can't believe that COVID-19 is now 5 years old. We still have some funds from that, but time just flies, and if the committee is amenable, I would be appreciative of this contribution to the project.
So any other comments on that one? So seeing none, anybody opposed to receipt? That carries. And recommendation, please. Moving second on recommendation. Any more discussion? Seeing none, anyone opposed to recommendation? That carries. Now, including Seal Bay Park in the Greater Merville Fire Protection Service Area. Moving second on receipt. And over to the fire chief himself, Bruce, over to you.
Thank you. Through CEO to the chair. I don't know if you guys are aware or not, but the currently Seal Bay Park that the city area owns has no fire protection or emerging medical response other than BC ambulance. BC Wildfire will be the responders for that, but it is obviously a delayed response. They're coming from Arrington or Quincy Fire Base. What we are looking to do is if we bring the park into the Merville Fire Protection Area, it will allow for an expedited response of emergency services to get there quickly and mitigate any situations. The park would remain in the jurisdiction of Coastal Fire Center. So if we did respond to a fire, we would be able to bill back the government for our services. And in the staff report, you will see, because we would be added medical response as well. I know we've been called out several times already to help BC Ambulance get injured hikers out from the waterfront. There would be a potential of up to $5,000 be brought in to the Merville Fire Protection Area to cover costs from one of the park's services. With that, I open it up to any questions.
Director Hardy?
Not really a question, but more of a comment. Seal Bay Park is the jewel of Comox Valley. So in my opinion, anything that we can do to make sure that park stays in place and isn't impacted by fires, or again, with regards to helping folks out in an immediate manner, I'm all in favor of this protection. Thanks.
Yeah, you made a good point there, because with that concentration of people, and that park is always absolutely stocked full, that the potential of a fire is exponentially worse than we'd like to be able to respond to. So, you know, that's I can't see any downside to this. Just one question before I take Director Arbor. So just refresh my memory. So anything east of the park is Comox Fire Department responds to, right?
Yes, east of the park is Comox, west of the park is Merville, and I guess Courtney gets the other part of it up top.
Yeah,
so there is a map that does show all the fire protection areas that surround the park.
Sounds right. Thanks. And Director Arbor?
Thanks. This is like, sorry, I'm losing my words, but this is something that came up this winter, and I think we've talked about around fire smart in forested environment. And I know on Hornby, I'm quite excited. I don't know how much headway we're making, but we're on a central area and trying to think about fire smarting. It's an embryonic conversation, but I think there's a lot of interest in acknowledgement that the coast has been pretty lucky in regards to wildfires. Yes, knock on wood, but eventually, you know, it's likely to catch up to us. And some of the studies and research that's been done around how Gary Oak / Douglas fir ecosystems were managed prior to colonization, and how that made more resilient landscapes. I think there is a concern, a general concern that parks are undermanaged and that fuel loads are increasing in a lot of our parks. So it's one thing to include Seal Bay in our fire protection, which I fully support, but I'm just wondering if Seal Bay, if as Director Hardy says, is, well, I would qualify and say one of our jewels because I'm in Area A, but I'm just wondering if fire smarting and managing that park a little bit different to reduce fuel risk and fuel load risk in the future, if that's something that's being considered at all by our parks and fire department services.
I know for Seal Bay in particular, I have discussed this with Mark, but I'll let Mark answer that.
Yeah, through the chair, Bruce and I have had discussions. I think this is the first step towards maybe having a more fulsome plan for kind of fire response and maybe fire smarting in the future. So I think if we can kind of start here and have Seal Bay in the fire protection area, then Bruce and I can have those conversations on making, you know, thinking about ways that we can maybe make it less susceptible to fire. I don't know if that could answer your question completely or not.
Director?
It does, and because we're on, you know, with this last item on the agenda here, I'll entertain you for 45 seconds, which is in the 90s when I was doing my bachelor. I actually did a bit of a thesis on the history of parks. and how they were really a colonial invention where we were creating nature that is supposed to be better, where humans are not part of it, i.e. a park. And then the rest of the land was really a secondary, not as valuable nature where we could do whatever we want. So it was like a deconstructivist history of the notion of parks. And I think we at the regional district could really rethink. We've talked about that in the past, especially in the context of our regional park new service. Notions like travel parks, notion like more active management, including logging to reduce fuel load. I think those are all things. See, I'm getting myself, but I think there's a recognition, especially in the environmental movement, that the concept of a static nature is actually detrimental to ecosystem health over time. And so we need to move from those old ideas around what a park is towards something that is more actively managed.
Director Hardy?
Thank you, Director Arbor, for those comments, and I totally agree with you. And I guess going back to the conversation with regards to the viewpoint at Royston, that was kind of where my mindset was going. Thanks.
Well, you probably know this, but back when they had the big Merville fires and the Blowdale fire and all the rest of it, we had a substantial forest fires in the electoral areas, but they weren't called that in those days. But the story of Miracle Beach Park is one where the fire did not touch the first growth timber, and that was a miracle. So hence the name Miracle Beach Park. But you know, you can't think it doesn't happen here. When if you've ever been up Wolf Lake and you see the size of the mountain there where the Blowdale fire peaked on the top of the mountain and the wind changed, there's nothing grows there. It's just baked rock, cracked rock. So, you know, it can happen here. And in fact, at the time, I think they had Navy ships from HMCS Esquimalt parked offshore just to take the people if they had to evacuate them. So we ain't seen nothing yet, folks. My question though is there any precedent for having like a fire stations in parks? But I guess if a fire gets to that point, you can't just grab an extinguisher and put it out. But you know, any pumps or anything like that, we don't really even have water. So
There's been no thought given to putting fire extinguishers in parks. I could see that being problematic.
yeah,
Although I know I've listened to the View Rural Fire Chief say, or Langford Fire Chief saying that people in the parks are the best fire protection we can have because they'll give us early notification if there is a fire.
well, it's true. Eyes and ears, right? At this point. Okay, so. Well, where are we at? We're on a receipt and pull some discussion on receipt. Call the question. Anybody opposed to receipt? That carries. Recommendation 1, somebody can move it. Move second on recommendation 1. Any comments on recommendation 1? Seeing nothing, call the question on it. Anybody opposed? That carries. And recommendation 2. Move second on 2. Any further discussion on that? Then that also carries, or should call the question. All those in favor? There you go. See, got to keep them on their toes. So that brings us to new business, and we don't have any now. I think we cleared that all up. We love our parks. Okay, so we are going to ask for a recommendation to adjourn to the in-camera portion of our program. And seconded, all in favor, that carries. Clear the courtroom. Where's my gavel?
Oh, it's really good.